Before we get into this video, I want to go ahead and make a bit of a disclaimer. This video right here is designed to mostly talk about the GOP establishment, the same GOP establishment that threw the 2012 election, the same GOP establishment that nuked the America First agenda the minute the last president got into office. That right there is what this video is mostly about. Now, guys, you saw the thumbnail. You thought to yourself, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about DeSantis. Not really. DeSantis, I think, is obviously the vessel that is being used, hence the term Trojan horse. Now, guys, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the personalities that are pushing this and obviously the personalities that are behind the man. Now, guys, I have praised Ron DeSantis on this channel before, and I do think he is a good governor down in Florida. However, I've been kind of paying attention to a lot of the hype, especially since the whole Martha's Vineyard thing. And I've noticed it's gotten thicker and thicker and thicker. And the guy is actually getting credit for things that other governors, like, say, I don't know, Greg Abbott was doing long before DeSantis actually did. Of course, I'm talking about busting illegals to blue cities. Now, before we start this video, I want to go ahead and let you guys know this video is going to be broken down into several parts. Number one, we're going to be trying to define who the establishment GOP is. We're going to be bringing that up a lot because this video is mostly about that. But we also need to talk about what is America First. That is going to be the first real topic we actually take on in this video. Also going to give you some background on the actual Tea Party itself. We're obviously going to be mentioning the establishment. I already mentioned that before. There's going to be a whole section dedicated to Paul Ryan, the establishment GOP, especially in terms of 2012 and what actually happened then and why it is I think they're trying to replicate the same thing today or going forward. We're also going to be speaking a lot about the donors and the actual conservative, personalities who are pushing this. And we're going to be giving ourselves a nice little verdict. But first and foremost, though, let's go ahead and start this with our good friend, Richard Baris.
And I think I'm going to lose some of you because you're not going to like what I have to say. But it is the truth because I would never lie to you. Not about things like this. That's one thing with me I can tell you. I'm sorry if you're upset by what I have to tell you because you really love somebody and you can't foresee them doing something like this. But they absolutely intend to screw Donald Trump. And they intend to use somebody that you hold in high regard to do so. And he increasingly seems willing to do it because they blow you up. They blow your head up.
And then you get the bug.
And then you get the bug. Fun ending.
Now, guys, obviously, I don't know Richard Baris personally, okay? So when I hear a good friend, what I really mean is I mean an actual guy who's pretty well, let's just say, based when it comes to his actual analysis. Richard Baris, I don't fully agree with him on that one because I think there could always be another possibility of why certain things are occurring the way they are. However, he does what he said was actually quite compelling. And I'm just going to sort of piggyback on what he means. But at the same time, I'm also giving my own personal 2 cents towards the end of this video. You see, Richard Baris is obviously somebody who understands what the establishment GOP is like and the type of games that they're playing. Also, before we get to Paul Ryan, this tweet was posted by Razor Fist, another guy who does a very, very good job explaining the GOP establishment. By the way, him being in Arizona, he would know all about it, especially having dealt with the fact that John McCain basically held the keys to the Arizona Republican Party for the longest time. And of course, well, I'm just going to tell you to go to his page and listen to the information that he gives because he's also very good. But before we go into that, and speaking of actual Razor Fist, he also did a video called TDS and Incurable Illness, and he brought up this notion that America First actually always existed. Guess what? He's actually correct. You see, what America First really was is it was a bunch of voters who had not voted in a while, a bunch of voters who thought that their votes did not count. So in 2010, they got branded the Tea Party. They went out there, they voted straight Republican up and down the ballot. And the reason why they did that was because they were getting tired of the nonsense in Washington, D.C. But I think it was Obamacare was the ultimate, let's just say it was the ultimate spark that set the fire. You see, when Obamacare came in, America kind of sort of looked at this and said, dude, this right here is actually socialism. This is actually Marxism. Of course, you should have been given the warning during the whole Joe the Plumber ordeal when Obama talked about giving people a fair shot. That right there should have been kind of an indication that Obama was not talking about fair as in merit. He was talking fair as an outcome, meaning basically equity, basically meaning that everybody kind of like is put on the same level. In America, you have to work for it. You know, it's merit-based society. Capitalism wouldn't have it any other way. And of course, those right there were signs that we were kind of getting that. So Donald Trump comes along in 2015. Technically, I say 15 because that is when he actually announced his campaign. Of course, I think Trump probably should have said that Trump if you actually paid attention to what he was saying, he was doing, you probably may have picked up that a presidential run at some point in time was in his future. We just didn't know what party, because at that time, Trump was still very, very much a business dim, but he was obviously becoming much, much more conservative in his actual leanings and, of course, talking about his actual policies itself. He was actually becoming more and more like that. And not to mention the fact he was on Fox News every Monday morning at 7 a.m., so that there might have given you an indication where he might would have been going. But either way, though, Trump did not start the America First movement. No, the America First movement has been around this entire time. It was the Tea Party. It was a bunch of voters who, quite frankly, just felt like their votes were not counting. They felt disenfranchised, so they didn't vote every election. And it wasn't until Donald Trump came around that they really and truly got engaged, or they got fully engaged. Like I said, the same voters showed up in 2010, but for whatever reason, they chose not to show up in 2012. Hence the idea, or hence the fact that I believe the GOP actually threw that election. We'll be talking more about 2012 when we get to the Paul Ryan section of the video. Speaking of Paul Ryan, he left this nugget out there the other day.
Electable in 2024, bearing in mind that you have a history with Mr. Trump.
Yeah, bear in mind, I do have everybody knows our feelings toward each other, I guess I'd say. My point is, we're going to want to win so badly, we're going to want to beat Biden and the Democrats in 2024, that we won't nominate Trump because we want to win. The new swing voter in American politics is the suburban voter. And it's really clear the suburban voter doesn't like Trump, but they like Republicans. So I think anybody not named Trump, I think, is so much more likely to win the White House for us. And it's sort of like what the Democrats did. They went from Dean to John Kerry in 2004. They went from Bernie to Hillary in 2016. They went from Bernie and Elizabeth Warren to Joe Biden to win in 2020. I think the same thing's going to be for us. We're going to want to win the White House so badly and beat the Democrats. And we know we're so much more likely to lose with Trump because of the fact that he's not.
Have you guys kind of noticed that it's all about the suburbs? It's just all about the suburbs. First and foremost, most people in America don't live in a suburb. So what makes the suburbs so special? Okay, I'm just a little bit curious. But by the way, guys, this is kind of sort of the, this is kind of sort of the thinking that costed Republicans in 2012. You see, Mitt Romney was a candidate picked by the suburbs for simply suburban voters. However, the thing that people don't seem to understand is that this country, for the most part, is actually, let's just go ahead and say, when they say that most of the country lives in urban areas, they're actually not lying. Most of the country does live in urban areas. It just depends on how big that said urban area is. Obviously, not every city in America is New York. Obviously, not every city in America is Los Angeles or Chicago. Not every city is like that. You've got small towns. Of course, a lot of those small towns are actually in rural areas. So in a lot of ways, most voters who live in small towns are kind of rural in a way, or they're kind of the rural voters. Now, Paul Ryan should know this, that this was actually the way to go when it comes to actually winning elections. You got to drive with the rural vote, because a fellow Wisconsinite by the name of Scott Walker in 2010, that's actually how he got elected. He drove up the rural vote in the state of Wisconsin, the 2010 gubernatorial election. He then did it in his recall election, and then he did it again in 2014. Obviously, he could not drum up the support in 2018, hence the fact that he actually lost his attempt at a second re-election. Well, I guess you could say it was going into his third term. Either way, though, Paul Ryan should know better, but Paul Ryan, once again, is mentioning the suburbs. And as I said before, it's the same type of strategy that cost the GOP in 2012. You see, a big part of me thinks, and I even talked about this in my Ron versus Don video, that if DeSantis was the nominee, I'm not so sure DeSantis would win. Now, granted, he's a good governor, but then again, like I said before, I think he's getting a little bit too much credit for things that, quite frankly, were being done by other governors. For example, Texas is way more pro-life. Florida only went to 16 weeks. Okay, the Don't Say Gay, which is really the Parental Rights Act legislation, DeSantis only had to third grade. Now you could say it was strategy. Then he changed it to sixth grade. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want that crap being taught to any kid in K through 12. Period. I think maybe that type of stuff, queer theory, crap like that, or there should probably be left for something like, say, college as an elective. Say if you're doing like gender studies or crap like that, which I personally don't see the use in gender studies, because let's be honest, there's only two sexes, and I mean, just this video is not really about that. Just figured I'd go on a tangent for a second. The fact of the matter is that it feels to me like the Republican Party is just simply okay with controlling the legislation and not actually producing an actual president. You see, Paul Ryan also went out of his way to stymie Trump going into office in 2016. He then turned around after Trump got into office and completely stymied it. Don't worry, we'll talk about personalities here very, very soon. Talking about the YouTube personalities, conservative personalities. We'll be talking about that here shortly, but I got to go ahead and mention this right here. Ann Coulter in 2011, 2012, she ran complete fire, ran complete cover for Mitt Romney, basically carried his water. I mean, I could say all kinds of other stuff, but I don't want this video to get monetized, to get demonetized or get struck because of bad language. So I'm going to kind of keep that stuff to myself. Ann Coulter then comes out there, supports Donald Trump, and grifts off him. He gets into office. Not even a week into his presidency, she has already turned on him. Well, what crackhead vagabonds didn't tell you was that it was actually Paul Ryan, the establishment GOP, who had already said that we're not going to fund your border wall. And like I said before, Paul Ryan was kind of sort of responsible for that. Rather, he was the House Speaker at the time. And to go on top of this, to kind of make matters much worse, the whole Russiagate stuff was actually he could have gone out of his way to stop that. But then again, though, at the same time, though, allowing that to come out kind of sort of let us know exactly how full of crap these people were. But at the same time, though, your initial reaction should have been to say, hey, look, this really looks like a bunch of nonsense. Paul Ryan, the GOP, never really and truly made a concerted effort to actually do this. Also, something else, too. Don't you guys find it funny that they won't? Don't you? I mean, for all you people out here who keep on saying that Trump has actually turned to the establishment, let me ask you a question. If Donald Trump is, let's just say if he's not a threat to the establishment, let's just say he's establishment, then why the hell is it that they're trying to lock him up? I just find it weird that they're trying to indict him and lock him up. They don't want him to run again. The reason why they don't want him to run again is because they know if he comes back in, it'll be one term. He'll have a full Senate, a full Congress. He'll probably sign a bunch of reforms, and some of those reforms are also going to include, guess what? Getting rid of the turds in our actual government. You see, sometimes when you drain a swamp, all you got to do is just simply pull the lever out, which means that there's this nice little net there to kind of catch everything, kind of filter all the water to go through. And of course, you can obviously see all the turds at the very top. That's also another form of draining the swamp. So in that regards, of him exposing everybody in the GOP as well as the Democratic Party as being nothing more than a bunch of turds, then I guess he did in fact drain the swamp. Guys, before we get on to personalities, I got to go ahead and throw this out here because this right here is very, very important, especially when it comes to actually draining the swamp. You see, most politicians, when they get in office, whether they be Republican or Democrat, guess what? They don't do exactly what they promise. They go out of their way not to do what the hell what they actually promise. Okay, they go out of their way to not do what it is that they actually campaign on. When Trump got elected, he got tax cuts. He got a lot of things. Well, a lot of things that he wanted to do that he tried to get done that the conservative voter actually felt good with. Even though he didn't get to do all of it, it looked to me like he was actually trying to do something. Obama, he didn't really and truly want to do anything. When he was in office, he kept on saying, change America. He did try to hurt America, obviously, but it wasn't the type of crap that he ran on in 2008, and it wasn't even the crap he ran on in 2012. Bush didn't do exactly what it is that he said he was going to do. Like I said, the vast majority of presidents will tell you something, or politicians will say something to get your vote to get into office and not actually do anything. When Trump got into office, we finally felt like we were actually getting something done. Let me give you one example before we move on, because these conservative personalities I'm going to be bringing up, for whatever reason, they decided to stay away from this issue, and they probably should continue to actually talk about this, but for whatever reason, they're not doing it anymore. It would be the issue of Roe v. Wade. Now, guys, like I said, the vast majority of conservative politicians, as you know, are what? They run as pro-life, correct? I'm a pro-lifer, okay? I've been wanting Roe v. Wade overturned for years because it was, quite frankly, bad law. When you overturn Roe v. Wade, what the hell happens is that the issue goes back to the states where it should have been. By the way, as I've told you guys on several occasions, I am not okay with abortion. I understand it when it comes to the case of the life of the mother. And of course, I understand it in certain situations. I mean, obviously, you don't want a woman to die. I think a lot of these decisions should be up to the parents, especially if it's over the issue of rape. It should be up to the parents as well as the child as well, in case something bad would happen. Obviously, nobody wants anything like that to happen to anybody. It's a much more murkier slope than you may think. But for the most part, I do not like abortion, and I'm very, very much pro-life. The thing is this right here. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, now Republicans no longer have an issue to run on, except, of course, in certain states. We're going too far with this stuff, or we're using it as birth control. I haven't heard any of these arguments out of some of these conservative commentators. By that, I'm talking about Coulter, Shapiro, Walsh. Granted, Walsh did a great job on what is a woman, but there's also issues there, too. A lot of these people right here see that once Roe v. Wade was overturned, guess what? They no longer have an issue. You see, a lot of these politicians rely on getting elected and getting elected only to have some type of, let's just say, they want office to get personal kickbacks, things of that nature. I'm not going to get too far into this, and somebody's already going to come in the comment section and say, you didn't provide no proof, dude. The proof is in the frickin' pudding, okay? You can kind of see this. Ask yourself why it is that Nancy Pelosi's bank account is so frickin' high. ask yourself why Jeb Bush has got so much money? Why don't you ask yourself why Barack Obama is damn near a billionaire? I thought you weren't supposed to be able to make money in politics. That is what the hell this entire thing is about, is money. That right there is what this whole thing is about. And also something else too. Ask yourself a question, why it is that Steven Crowder constantly gets a strike, but Ben Shapiro, who talks the exact same way, talks about the exact same issues, finds a way to never get a strike or somehow upset the community guidelines. Ask yourself that question about the entire Daily Wire, because we're about to speak about them next. But before we do that, guys, there is something that needs to be said, okay? I want to go ahead and throw this out here. Now, I'm going to roll this clip for you, okay? Because this was released the other day. We're going to come back to it. And I'm going to talk about this said individual and a few other individuals before we even get to the neocons on the internet.
If they got on a stage, you don't think that DeSantis is crafty enough or stands enough to, really? Interesting.
No, I don't even think that a little. I think Trump sucks up all the energy in every room, no matter what. And even someone as skilled as a politician and smart policy-wise as DeSantis can't overcome that. He can't. You really think the hardcore MAGA is going to abandon Trump for DeSantis? They're not. They like DeSantis, but they don't think it's his turn. They think Trump was screwed out of his last election, that he was screwed out of his first term by all the craziness, the Russiagate and so on. And they think he is entitled. He deserves another shot at it. Like the hardcore Trump faithful is unshakable. They like DeSantis, but they would never cross Trump for him. And they think that DeSantis owes his political career to Trump. Like, if forced to choose, they will choose Trump. So DeSantis can't take him down. It's like the line in War Games, the only winning move is not to play. DeSantis has got to either be crowned by Trump, or he shouldn't run. He won't win over Trump. I'll stand by that. You can play it against me if I'm wrong, but I won't be.
In the full clip, which, by the way, you can find on the internet, I chose to use this one right here because it actually suits up what I'm about to talk about next perfectly. Dave Rubin says, originally, I hope that these two have a conversation, meaning I hope that Trump and DeSantis have a conversation, and that DeSantis kind of strong arms him and says, you need to get out of the way and let me run, even though you see these polling numbers, which quite frankly are very, very consistent, showing you that with Trump in the field, Ron DeSantis stands no freaking chance. Megyn Kelly made a very good point there. You see, Megyn Kelly would understand this better than anyone. You see, Megyn Kelly was the first Fox News personality to actually get, let's just say, stumped by the Trump, okay? She was the first person to actually have to deal with that. I'm pretty sure she would know. By the way, Dave Rubin, and like I said, I don't have a problem with Dave. I actually like Dave. However, the thing about Dave Rubin is you got to be wary of people who come over from TYT, people who work for a progressive news organization, which don't even get me started on that. You got to be wary of them coming over here and suddenly having an awesome red pill moment when they have a conversation with Larry Elder, who, by the way, is for the most part a libertarian, not really an actual conservative. I like Larry. I'm not bashing him, just kind of telling you what he is. But yet, Rubin, for whatever reason, who, by the way, is, he decided to rent two women's wombs out. I mean, the guy's obviously somewhat narcissistic. I think I did a video on that a while back. You need to be wary of who you listen to when it comes to actually choosing a candidate. You see, Rubin's not even really a conservative. He's more of a moderate, if anything else. He's a former lefty, and I'm pretty sure he still has some very, very liberal leanings that, quite frankly, still are not good for conservatives of the country going forward. To go on top of this, you've had Bill Maher come out and say he would prefer a DeSantis, but we all know Bill Maher is never going to vote Republican. He's always going to vote for the Democrat. He'll vote for Joe Biden again in 2024 or if it's Hillary Clinton. Stop taking advice from these guys here. Or what about Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan is not a conservative, dude. He voted for frickin' Joe Jorgensen in 2020. He backed Bernie Sanders in 2016. He backed Bernie Sanders in 2020. Stop listening to liberals and reformed leftists when it comes to picking your candidate. That also includes Tim Pool as well. However, I don't typically give Tim that much crap because Tim is still somewhat caught up in the air of like which side he's going to actually choose between the two, but we'll probably do a special video on Tim at a later date. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the other crackheads out there. In 2016, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, and I've brought this up. By the way, this is Matt Walsh I guess this was his soy days. I don't know. By the way, I have to remind people all the time, and by the way, I didn't even find out till recently that I don't trust Matt Walsh when it comes to this issue either. Even though he made this great documentary called What is a Woman, and even though he was apparently a teacher at one point in time, even though the fact that not only was that the case, this same guy, who by the way is Catholic, at one point in time, of course you're seeing a couple of his tweets right here, he voted for Evan McMullen, de facto voting for Hillary Clinton. What else did he do? Oh, that's right. He also said he hated Trump supporters more than he did Trump. Now, guys, Matt Walsh didn't. I don't know if he realized this or not. Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and say that he did realize this. The vast majority of the Trump supporters he was talking about was evangelicals who don't vote. You see, another reason why Mitt Romney lost in 2012 is because the evangelicals just weren't willing to go vote for him. They thought that Mitt Romney was a phony, and they also thought it wouldn't be any different than what it was under Obama. Not to mention the fact that Romney himself had basically had so many flip-flops and was even somewhat of a liberal himself, even though he had an R by his name. The Christian voters just weren't going to go out there and support him. Yet we were willing to forgive Donald Trump, who had been married and divorced twice, cheated on his wife, etc., etc. At least Trump never hid from his actual sins. At least he came out and presented a united front saying he has truth. Even though we all know Trump was probably the least religious president in American history, he actually did more for Christians in this country than I can think of any other Republican president, possibly in history. Of course, I got to go back and research everything. But of course, Matt Walsh did not like this. Once again, Matt Walsh, if you dig into his past, you see exactly how bad it is. Trump derangement syndrome was bad for him, and what does he do? He continues to pound the freaking sand for guess who? Ron DeSantis. I mean, let's just let that sink in. Now let's talk about Ben.
Something that voters should keep in mind as they move forward. I'm not saying that if Trump is the nominee, I won't vote for him. I'm not saying that Trump didn't do many wonderful things as president. I've said all of those things many times before. I'm saying, what is the strategic acumen that leads you to undermine your own Senate candidates on the basis of petty personal grievance? What? See, here's the thing. I like winning.
Guys, I agree with Ben Shapiro a lot, okay, when it actually comes to actual personal politics and stuff. However, I do not like him as a person. I do not. Ben Shapiro also, like Matt Walsh, stayed home in 2016. Do you know who didn't stay home in 2016? Stephen friggin' Crowder. Okay, you know who did not stay home in 2016? Michael Savage. I'm not a fan of Michael Savage, by the way, either. Don't really like him. But at least he went out there and voted. Rush Limbaugh went out there and voted. Sean Hannity went out there and voted. Don't worry, we'll get back to Walsh here in a second. We'll get back to Walsh in a second because it's kind of linked. Ben Shapiro basically told you right then and there that he would more than likely not support Trump if he ran in 2024. That's just his way of doing it. Now, guys, can I go ahead and explain what that little squabble's about? It's about a Colorado Senate candidate named John O'Day. Or O'Shea, whatever the hell his name is. The guy's a massive, rabid anti-Trumper, along the lines of like a Jeff Flake or a Mitt Romney. By the way, this doesn't surprise me because Ben Shapiro, once again, like Ann Coulter, carried water for Mitt Romney and has never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, actually denounced their actual support of Mitt Romney. He never has, okay? People will say, well, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. He hasn't done none of that crap. Ben Shapiro is still very, very much a neocon. By the way, guys, and you guys know me, I'm not some, we should not get involved in any wars type person, even though I don't think we should get involved in the issue in Ukraine. Ben Shapiro, for years, has pounded the drum saying that we should have never left Afghanistan. Now, me personally, my feeling on Afghanistan is this right here. I did not like the way we left. However, at the same time, though, the war was becoming unwinnable. Ben Shapiro has never carried a weapon, never carried a rifle. He's never done anything to ever suggest to you that he would actually physically fight for this friggin' country. Also, something else, too. Going back to that Senate candidate that I, quite frankly, did not pick up on, that Senate candidate also vowed to actually run against Donald Trump in the election to keep him from getting the nomination. But yet, because Donald Trump did not do what Ben Shapiro told him to do, now Ben Shapiro is out here saying, I'm not saying I will or I won't say I won't. Trust me, Ben Shapiro will not vote for Donald Trump in 2024. I'm telling you right now, I'm calling it right now. You can come back to this video and you'll see that I was right. Matt Walsh did the exact same thing, de facto campaigning for the Democrat because they didn't get their way because the little boy didn't win. By the way, their boy in 2016 was Ted Cruz. Now it's Ron DeSantis. And also, and don't worry, we'll talk about DeSantis here in the next segment because it can kind of encapsulate what the video is really and truly about. The thing that you have to understand is that these people right here, they know that they're never going to get touched. It does not matter how bad the economy is. Ben Shapiro has got money. He's a rich, very, very rich, wealthy man. So is all the members of the Daily Wire. I'm talking about Brett Cooper. I'm talking about Jeremy Borman. I'm talking about Matt Walsh. By the way, they all now live in Tennessee. Tennessee's a pretty freaking red place. These guys ain't got to physically go out there and go vote. So it does not surprise me if they say we're going to stay home. Remember something. These people are not your friends, and they do not know how to empathize with you. Within 5 minutes of Ben Shapiro's podcast, you can actually hear that. By the way, when he had that beard, he looked super beta. I'm just kind of figuring out exactly. I mean, is it his voice? I'm not going to get away. Just know this right here. These people right here are shills for the establishment. They pretend that they're conservatives, but in reality, they're really not. Ask yourself a question. They lived in California where their vote was not going to count. Then they eventually moved to Florida, then turned right back around for a few months later and moved to Tennessee where their votes were not going to count. So them saying, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump out of principle is really just a cop-out because we already knew that they were not going to support him to begin with. Now to DeSantis. That's right. That is right. You see, I almost forgot about this. Do you guys remember the hoopla over the vaccines? I mean, I just want to kind of throw this out here. By the way, I'm not telling anybody to go get jabbed or not get jabbed. That's not the way I am. I never got jabbed, so I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I think it's all that information should be for your doctor. You see, I have a little theory, and my theory is that after Trump got in office, he kind of bowed to the establishment to a certain degree, so that way he could get some type of support in his reelection. You see, Donald Trump by trade is an actual deal maker, so that's what he does. He makes deals. You know, you got to give a little to get a little, that type of thing right there. I highly suggest you actually read The Art of the Deal or The Art of the Comeback, and you may would actually know this man, because at the end of the day, that's what he is, a deal maker. Well, Ben Shapiro at the same time was also pushing his viewers to go get the vaccine, telling them that they should get the vaccine. Of course, Shapiro had a bit of a turnaround the other day. He had originally gotten called out by Elijah Schaffer, who quite frankly disagreed with him over this issue. But of course, Ben Shapiro also peddled the vaccine stuff. By the way, DeSantis also advised people to go get the vaccines too. But of course, we don't mention that because we act like he's a pro-freedom governor, which, by the way, Florida is definitely a much more free place. I'm not bashing him on that right there. I'm just simply pointing it out. Also, something else, too, about Shapiro. Shapiro said he agreed, in theory, with red flag laws. He actually did a video. He actually had a video clip, which, by the way, I'll just show you the tweet, in reference to Eric Swalwell. Now, guys, I'm not in favor of red flag laws at all, but I've also talked about how DeSantis was okay with red flag laws. And by the way, this was all occurring right around the same time that Donald Trump was pitching the whole red flag law stuff to Congress at that time. Now, guys, I want you to ask yourself a question. Does it sound to me like maybe the establishment may have actually been in control of them? You see, the thing is this right here, and I know you're probably saying you're completely contradicting yourself, but I want you guys to kind of think about this really quick. Is it possible that Trump made deals to get support for his reelection? Is it possible that right there is what he did, and maybe nowadays Donald Trump just straight up regrets it, and maybe that there's a reason why Republicans are kind of like getting out of the way and allowing the FBI to actually go in there? I mean, I would pay very, very close attention to this, and let's see if this comes true after 2022. RDS, Ron DeSantis, and by the way, I've praised him. Like I said, I've praised him. I thought he did great during COVID. I thought he did great in the lockdowns. I think, however, he gets a lot of credit that, quite frankly, is not really and truly earned. As I may have said earlier in this video, a lot of the stuff that he's done, like, say, sending illegals, which, by the way, he only sent them to Martha's Vineyard. I mean, Greg Abbott's been sending illegals to Chicago, to New York, all over the place. Why is he getting credit for that? Why is it that it's so special that he's got an abortion ban at 16 weeks where Texas is much, much more pro-life? I'm not trying to shield for Greg Abbott or anything. I'm just pointing out the obvious. One more thing, too, and I have to keep bringing this up when it comes to DeSantis. A lot of Trump haters like to bring up the fact that Donald Trump was in favor of red flag laws. I have acknowledged that before, that Donald Trump was in favor of red flag laws. But I also have acknowledged on several occasions that he almost lost my vote due to that. And of course, it was right around that time there that Dana Lash called him out for it and Trump changed his stance. Ron DeSantis, of course, when he was in Congress, actually voted with Obama 65% of the time, okay? Also, to go on top of this, the red flag laws in Florida, why he did not implement them, guess what? He has praised them before. I'll leave the link in the description box. I've played it in these videos on several occasions. Also, something else too, the Solve It Trap issue, the Solve It Trap ordeal, the thing that went viral, that occurred in his frickin' state. Why is the ATF harassing the literal hell out of your voters and your citizens in your state, Ron? What I'm trying to say to you is that when you actually examine this man's record, oh, by the way, he was also in favor of pulling down Confederate statues at one time. If you actually examine his record, if you actually look into it, guess what you find? You don't find a conservative. You find more of a moderate, somewhat, I wouldn't call him a rhino, but you find out that he's not as strong on the issues you may think. Also, something else too. This right here was pointed out the other day. Trump's getting a lot of his money from small donors. By the way, they're giving Trump hell for not supporting these GOP candidates. Yet every time you turn around, he's doing a rally for J.D. Vance. He's doing a rally for Oz. Look, Trump don't have to donate any money. His name, his brand is actually strong enough to where he does not need to actually donate any money. By the way, he also lost money when he was in office, but yet somehow or another, Ron DeSantis has got $200 million, which is supposed to be for some type of a re-election campaign in Florida, when we all know he's got it in the bag. We all know what the $200 million is for him to run in 2024, of which, by the way, he more than likely would lose. like I said before, I'm not really concerned about Ron DeSantis, the candidate, or anything. I'm concerned more about the establishment GOP and why it is that Richard Baris's comments could be 100% correct. I'm just saying that you guys may want to look into this. This is also another reason why I'm tempted to say, why don't you guys just give it the next 4 years and see what DeSantis does outside this, because when you've got people like Jeb Bush supporting you, now you got Rick Wilson from the Lincoln Project supporting you, now you got freaking the Daily Wire, who, by the way, were all, for the exception of Michael Knowles, rabid anti-Trumpers back in 2016. They were even anti-Trump when he was in office. When you've got Ken Griffin, when you've got the Koch brothers, when you got all the same people who helped destroy this country to begin, help actually run this place on the ground, so that way Obama could be set up and also nuke the Trump agenda, yeah, I'd be a little bit concerned about the possibility of DeSantis being the nominee. So yes, I kind of sort of agree with Richard Baris. I think that DeSantis is willing to actually screw him over, and of course, I'm a little bit worried. Now, guys, one of the reasons why I think, and this is where I'm going to end the video at, one of the reasons why this video is being made, by the way, we may even do another video on this at a later date. Yeah, my chair is squeaking. Here's the thing, guys. I am in no way, shape, or form saying I would not vote for Ron DeSantis if he was the nominee. I'm not saying that at all. However, I would say this right here, and this right here is what I want to go ahead and point out. If you've got Jeb Bush and you've got the people who actually helped destroy this country, help create the mess that we're in now, if you've got these people backing Ron DeSantis, that's a problem. That's a very, very big issue. You see, guys, in 2012, I was very, very much of the mindset of just vote red. Just vote red. I had so much disdain for Barack Obama that I couldn't think straight, okay? And then 2014, I went out there and did it again. And in 2015, I was beginning to wake up to everything that was going on. And, of course, I was very, very much anti-Trump within the actual Republican Party. And then, of course, in the summer 2016, I did some research. I found out where the money was coming from, who was getting this, who was getting that there. I found out that people like, say, Mitt Romney. By the way, Mitt Romney received $1 million from Goldman Sachs during his presidential run. And, by the way, Goldman Sachs gave Barack Obama $1 million before that. You see, when I figured out that that's exactly what the swamp is, I said, screw this right here. You know, put your finger over your nose and just. I mean, actually, I didn't really put my finger over my nose. I went in there and actually hit the button very hard for him, so that way Hillary Clinton and the swamp would not get elected. At that point in time, I said, the devil I don't know is better than the one that I do. I was, for the most part, genuinely satisfied with the Trump administration. I'd like him to come back and run again. I think a lot of things have got to get done, a lot of reforms. Now, granted, I don't agree with everything he did. Like I said before, he almost lost my vote in 2000 and going into 2020 over the red flag law stuff. But here is the thing. Knowing what we know now and knowing that the GOP establishment is the way it is, seeing the way they actually torpedoed his presidency long before the Democrats did, yes, I would be a little bit skeptical if DeSantis is coming into office, which, by the way, and I've already mentioned this before, even if he's the nominee, it's not even a guarantee that he would win. I mean, just look at this clip real quick.
Talk about Joe Biden a lot. I understand. You think you're going to be running against him. I can see how you might get confused, but you're running for governor. You're running for governor, and I have a question for you. You're running for governor. Why don't you look in the eyes of the people of the state of Florida and say to them, if you're reelected, you will serve a full 4-year term as governor? Yes or no? Yes or no, Ron? Will you serve a full 4-year term if you're reelected governor of Florida? It's not a tough question. It's a fair question. He won't tell you.
Of course, the following day after that clip from that debate, Gerald A., Steven Crowder, basically held water for Ron DeSantis, saying he was trying to wait. No. This guy's not ready for prime time. As a matter of fact, I actually could see him being used to throw the election. Now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the video on this one last thing. It needs to be said. 2024 is a very big year. It's an extremely big year for one main reason. It's not just the presidency. It's control of the United States Senate. Republicans have got a lot of possible races that Democrats are holding that they more than likely could win. Let me go ahead and name off a few. John Tester, Montana. That right is a very, very winnable race. Kristen Sinema, Arizona. Very, very winnable race. You got the girl and you got the dude in Nevada. Very, very winnable race. That's 3 very, very winnable races right there for Republicans going into that election cycle. Also something else too. Sherrod Brown in Ohio. That's 4. Amy Klobuchar could lose. That's 5. Also, who else? Elizabeth Warren. I don't know about Elizabeth Warren. Basically, what I'm saying is if you actually look at the actual list of Senate candidates, there's possibly 15 races that Democrats are going to have to actually pump money into to defend. And I think that what the GOP and Democrat establishment is that I think that they don't want anybody having the actual mandate or the ability to stamp them out of their jobs because, of course, term limits is something that, quite frankly, these establishment politicians do not want. I think what's happened is that the establishment has gotten to DeSantis. So yes, I would be a little bit, just a little bit concerned once you see all these figures backing Ron DeSantis, the same never Trumpers, or behind this man right here and actually footing the bill for him. Guys, John Claymore, if you like the content, hit the like button, subscribe, share the video. This is just my thoughts on the matter. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section.